What's so great about Sophie? I am of course talking about the ever popular trio of patterns by Petite Knit. The Sophie Scarf, Sophie Shawl and Sophie Hood. They're claimed to be beginner friendly, stash busting friendly and really quick knits, especially the scarf and shawl, and the perfect accessory to elevate any outfit. But is it really? Hiya besties and welcome to another video on my channel. I am Shai and today I want to try a pattern that I didn't think I'd ever try, the Sophie Scarf. So I love a good shawl project. I've knit many big cozy shawls on the channel and I use them almost daily in the colder seasons. And we have a lot of cold season here where I live. I live in Sweden, so it's shawl weather most of the year. So I use a lot of shawls, right? So a small scarf was never really on my radar. But I'm curious, why is this one so popular? What's so great about Sophie? The scarf has over 40,000 projects logged on Ravelry, so it has to be doing something right. So let's cast one on today and see for ourselves if it's really all that. I will also keep track of how long the scarf takes me to knit. I will knit the bigger size of the scarf and I will keep track of the time I spend making it, just for fun. Not a challenge, just for fun. And if we have time, I might want to dip my toes in deeper and start a shawl as well for science and for stash busting. This is not at all a thinly veiled attempt to use up some stash. I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, I am of course only one person with one opinion, so I will also be doing a bit of digging to see if there's any noteworthy lore or opinions about these patterns as well, because I kind of want to do a little bit of a dive into this. There are certain discussions that always surface as soon as someone mentions Petite Knit, but I think I will save that for later in the video, because right now I think we should start on our project and get into the knitting, and we will chat while we work and also a bit after. So yeah, let's go. After a very brief dive into my stash, I found these two scraps of yarn from a cardigan project. I have slightly more than the option the pattern said to hold double, so that is exactly what I'm going to do with these for that extra squishy feeling. I don't know, there is something about garter stitch and a really soft yarn that I just love. This yarn is alpaca, so it's really soft. I will be making the bigger scarf option today, and like I mentioned in the intro, I am timing myself. One thing I had heard before starting this was that people sometimes struggle with counting the rows between increases and decreases. I know I am able to read my knitting, but I am also a professional of losing track of things, especially when counting, so I will be 2 steps ahead of myself. I'm going to be marking my increase rows. Not a stitch marker in every single increase row, because that would be a ridiculous amount of stitch markers, but I use 3 and move the third up to the row I am currently increasing on, if that makes sense. I'm just keeping track of the amount of stitches on my needles to know how far into the pattern I am. But bestie, we have a problem. I lost yarn chicken. I must have gotten confused with the yarn amounts. I will say I didn't struggle reading the pattern at all, but the way the recommended yarns are written out confused me. I will be ripping back and starting over and knitting this with just 1 strand of yarn instead of 2. There goes my dream of a super squishy little scarf, but what does one do? I will also start the timer over as I'm starting the shawl again. And I also switched to another pair of circulars. I don't mind the shorties I was knitting with earlier. They were actually kind of perfect for this project, but I don't know, I just like metal needles more than wooden ones. Anyway, on we go. and somehow this was so much faster than the original one I made. I was zooming through this scarf, still in the bigger size, and after just 4.5 hours we are all done knitting. What? I have to say, when I started this I was kind of a hater, or at least the tiny scarf didn't really do anything for me. This might be because of the colour, but it's kinda cute. I still don't know how much use I will have for this, honestly, but I have to say knitting it was addictive. So addictive, in fact, that I want to try the shawl. Let's pick out some more yarn from the stash. This time I will be going with some hand spun. This year I really need to make an effort to use up some of my hand spun yarns. This skein is one I made in a video on the channel years ago, and it's finally gonna get to be used. So let's cake it up. And let's start it. It's about the same process as the scarf, but on way bigger needles, and also a different amount of rows between increases. So I will keep doing my little stitch marker hack along the increased edge to keep track. This yarn was fractal spun in 3 plies, and is, if I remember correctly, made up of merino wool, rose fibre and baby llama. Super soft, and I think it'll drape beautifully. And the fractal fade is gonna be so fun too. This time I'm not timing myself, I am just vibing, because oh my goodness, this is the kind of mindless knitting I've been craving. Sometimes just knitting back and forth is so relaxing for the brain, you know? For this one I am going by yarn usage for when I know I reach the middle. And now, my friends, we have reached the middle, so I'm going to put this project to the side so we can chat, because I want to chat. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, I am but one person with one opinion. Actually, I have several opinions after this knitting adventure, but still, I don't want to be out here acting like I'm some sort of authority just because I made a video. So I took to Instagram and I asked you guys what some of your thoughts are about these patterns, as I know it's one of these divisive patterns. And oh my goodness, besties, you had a lot to say. Kinda spicy, very interesting. I won't be reading out every single message. I will also keep things anonymous, but I have gone through all the answers and summarized the opinions, and I will be kinda responding or agreeing and sprinkling in my own opinions and takes here and there. So I asked a bunch of different questions, so let's get into it. We've already been hanging out for a bit, so maybe you've finished your tea already, or coffee, or whatever you have, so make another one, because we're gonna get into some more tea. I have coffee, but tea. So I asked a bunch of different questions on Instagram. The first one being if people have knit the pattern or any of the Sophie patterns, with the options being yes, I have knit one, yes, I have knit several, no, but I will or I might make one, and no, and I will not be making one. And the 2 no options had the most votes, especially the no, I will not be making one, which I found kind of interesting, as this pattern has once again so many projects on Ravelry. Totally fine though. I am not here to sway any opinions in either way, but moving on to the next slide, I asked you guys if you found the pattern to be beginner friendly, with one of these slide things going from no to yes, and we ended up with the average being closer to yes than no, but also closer to the middle than yes. So I guess kinda, and I can honestly see that. I'll get to that in a second. After these 2 slides, I had some question boxes up about people's opinions after knitting the patterns, and then people's opinions if they haven't knit the pattern for any reason, because I was curious what made people not want to knit them, or if it's a case of I haven't but I want to, or yeah, I wanted to hear why. And also a third box for thoughts in general about these patterns or petite knit, and yeah, I will get over all 3 of these all in one go, sort of, because these answers do go hand in hand. They kind of bleed into each other a little bit, so I think it's best to just merge it all together and talk about it. But also, first of all, I just want to say thank you all for replying and for sharing your thoughts and opinions with me. It's been super fun and interesting to read, and yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So let's go. No, it's not the start of a video, so whatever. Anyway, let's go. One thing that came up multiple times in the replies is how the scarf and shawl being separate patterns feels kind of cash grabby, and they could easily be the same pattern, or that a Sophie bundle should exist. And I honestly kind of agree. I cannot see anything because my glasses are dirty. Now, I will say the scarf and shawl are both different, as there's a different amount of rows in between the increase and decrease rows in the scarf versus the shawl. It's obviously also a different gauge and a different yarn weight, different needles, and an ever so slightly different shape, thanks to the difference in row count. But I definitely think a bundle should exist. As for cash grabby, I'm gonna go with the stance of, again, I wish there was a bundle, or buy one Sophie and get another one at a discount. But also, it's not necessarily cash grabby in my opinion, as not everyone who buys the shawl is gonna want to buy the scarf. Not everyone who buys the scarf is gonna want to buy the hood. Like, does this make sense? Maybe you're not interested in a scarf, but you're very interested in a hood. So I don't think it's necessarily cash grabby, because that would mean you would want all three of the patterns. Then again, we have people like me who wanted all three patterns and would definitely like a bundle. So, but also, if it were me and my pattern, I like to make my patterns work for as many as possible. So I would probably have either made a bundle or a 2-in-1 pattern kind of thing, or made the scarf as a little freebie and the shawl and hood as a bundle or something like that. But that's me, I guess. But also, as designers, and one too, we kind of try to make a living doing this. So I do think it's fair to charge for our patterns. Maybe I'm coming out with a little bit of a hot take here, but I find it interesting how there's an ongoing and active discussion about fair compensation for our design work and for our art as artists and pattern designers. There's been a bunch of talk about people ripping off patterns, basically sharing them with people or uploading them illegally to share for free on other sites or in Discords. We're all in agreement that this is sad. This is not something we should be doing. Artists and pattern designers deserve fair pay for their work, right? We're all in agreement about this, until someone creates a pattern that's kind of plain and gets very, very popular. Then it's okay to like kind of dogpile and be like, this pattern isn't worth paying for. I know, it's kind of a hot take. I just want to put this out there that I see this a lot. I think that's interesting because I did some research. I tried to read about these patterns on Reddit, get more input and opinions, and that's where I decided I wanted to talk to you guys instead of just going off of Reddit, because Reddit. Anyway, there were a bunch of people being like, well, she's such a big designer, it's okay if I share the pattern, or it's okay if I download it for free off of somewhere because she has so many downloads already. And no, I don't agree. I don't agree at all. If you don't want to knit the Sophie and pay for it, there are a bunch of free similar patterns that you could get instead. There, I said it. But yeah, maybe a little bit of a hot take. I don't know, sorry for getting heated, but as a pattern designer myself, no, we don't copy patterns. I was saying, it's okay until someone makes something that gets popular and is kind of plain. Because I agree, these patterns are very plain. They are very simplistic and plain. And I'm still not sure if the scarf is for me. But it's for someone. It's for 40,000 someone's. And that's great. TLDR, I have very mixed opinions about this part of the whole thing, and I don't mean to like talk back at anyone who replied to my comments. It's just my opinions. I do see what you mean as well, and I'm definitely not saying anyone who replied to me said anything about copying the patterns or downloading them for free anywhere. No, you guys are all good. You're all good. You're all fine. I've just seen it elsewhere and it's got me a little bit heated, so I just wanted to put this in there because it's kind of part of the wider conversation about petite knit in general. But yeah, I have mixed opinions opinions. I agree there should definitely be a bundle. I also think it's fair to charge for your patterns. Even if they are simple, sometimes you just don't want to do the math yourself and you can pay for a pattern where someone has made the math. That's fine too. But anyway, moving on. I saw one thing mentioned several times as well in my story replies, that the pattern is kind of hard to follow and not super well written in English. The fact that having to track your increases and decreases throughout the entire pattern isn't necessarily super beginner friendly, and that it could be more informative and more of a walkthrough. And I feel like if you are a newer knitter or you come to knitting from crochet, you're used to patterns being formatted differently than knitting patterns have kind of historically been. Maybe with photos, maybe with more descriptive language, video guides, and lots of resources basically. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I see newer knitting patterns having more of this, and I personally format my patterns this way because I prefer it. Heck, I even record video tutorials for a lot of my patterns as well. But these patterns are very standard, bare bones knitting pattern style, meaning it's just the directions, black and white, no photos, just the directions on how to make the thing. Of course it has the important information like yarn amounts, gauge, abbreviations list, all of that, but it has no extra hand holding, no extra descriptive language, and I know some people actually prefer this and others absolutely do not. That's fine. I haven't knit for very many years now, and I've lived through the literally just text in a Google Doc knitting pattern era. My patterns used to, or my older patterns still are, because I'm still working through reformatting all of my patterns. My older patterns are formatted this way because that was the standard for the longest time with knitting patterns. So I personally don't struggle reading these kinds of patterns, but I completely understand why somebody would. And again, why one would prefer to have a more guided experience with their project. I wouldn't say it's badly written, but it's very plain and to the point. I will say though, the comments about it being badly written or translated and not making sense in English was mostly about the Sophie hood, and this is the one I cannot say anything about because I haven't knit it. I do not own the pattern. Again, I'm wishing there had been a bundle because I would have liked to get it just to read through the pattern for the sake of the video, but there is also a limit to my spending on patterns per video, and I opted to just get the two that I wanted to actually knit. So for all I know, that one might be a hot mess. I do not know. I did show you how I tracked my increases and decreases while working the pattern, but again, I'm a very seasoned knitter, and I do see how that would also be difficult for someone to do if they are newer to knitting, because it also involves counting your rows. But the plain garter stitch aspect of the pattern, in my opinion, is very beginner friendly because it's just plain knitting back and forth. But the constant counting can absolutely be a lot, and I see why this is not the most beginner friendly one. Then we have another opinion, and that is a lot of people replying to the question boxes that it's just plain not their style. The scarf looks a little bit silly and it's just not something that sparks any interest. And some of you, and honestly this is something I relate to, some of you are contrarian and don't want to make it because it's trendy and everybody else is making one. And I feel this in my bones. But I also wanted to make a video about these patterns, and I felt like it would be weird for me to make a video about patterns I haven't even read or tried, so here we are. But yeah, lots of people going it's not my style, which is absolutely, totally and completely fair. It's not for you, and that's cool. That's what's so beautiful about this community. There's so many things one can make, so there's bound to be something for everyone. There is also this answer: I would rather knit something by a smaller designer to give them exposure than to knit something by a bigger designer like Petite Knit. And that is also a valid take in my opinion. For those of you who like the idea of a Sophie scarf or shawl but don't necessarily want to make a Petite Knit pattern, I have actually made a Ravelry bundle, and I will be rapid firing some of the patterns from that bundle on screen in just a bit. But I also want to build on this point a little bit. I think this is, like I said, a totally valid take. We do love to boost smaller creators. I have a couple of points to make though. I do feel like one thing does not have to exclude the other. I, for instance, am an enjoyer of a good West knits pattern. Does Stephen West need more exposure? Probably not, but I will probably keep making his patterns and talking about them. I will definitely also keep enjoying patterns by smaller creators, and those post about those when I can as well. Checking myself a little bit here though, because I rarely follow other people's patterns these days. I'm often busy with my own patterns and designs, so I don't post a lot about patterns and designers. I'll get better with this, but still, my point is, yes, we boost smaller creators, but we also don't shame people for knitting things from bigger creators, in my opinion. I'm not saying any one of you who replied to my stories said anything shamey at all, but the discussion easily goes in that direction, and I feel like we don't really need to be doing that. However, the very last point made that I want to bring up today in this little recap of the story replies is not size inclusive. And it is true that for the longest time, petite knit patterns only went up to a 2XL. I think most of the patterns are now graded up to a 5XL. I tried to do some research on this, and from what I can find, the grading isn't that great. Also, there was a general disinterest, or perceived at least, but I wasn't there for that, so I'm just going off of what I've read. A general disinterest in actually grading for the bigger sizes at first, and I think the bigger sizes are a newer development. I am also aware that there are better ways of naming your sizing chart, like going by measurements, but it's what Petite Knit is using, so that's why I am using that scale, and she has patterns ranging from an extra small to the 5XL. But yeah, this is all, of course, not great. So I completely understand not wanting to support Petite Knit for this reason. Of course, size inclusivity doesn't really apply to shawls and scarves in the same way it does a garment, but still, it's not about the pattern in this case with this opinion, it's about the designer, and I understand this take. So yeah, lots of opinions about these patterns, mostly negative, but there were of course also story replies from people who have made these projects, the scarf, the hood, the shawl, and really enjoyed making them, enjoy wearing them, and I don't want to bring down your enthusiasm about what you've made. I'm really happy you made stuff you loved, because that's what we're all here to do. But yeah, again, the majority of the comments did not like these patterns. I guess maybe the crew these patterns are for isn't really the crew that I'm surrounded by, if that makes sense, and I feel like that is fine. At the end of the day, not everyone is gonna like every single knitting pattern, and again, that's fine. I really enjoyed knitting my projects. The back and forth garter stitch is super addictive, and it was a fun knit, but the scarf is still something I'm not sure about. But you know what I have for you guys. Patterns by other designers. I'm gonna start with the free pattern, The Simple Thing. This one is very similar in looks to the Sophie patterns, in case you like the look but you don't like the price or the designer. Then we have a sweeter version, The Claire by Lisa Hannes, Sweet Little Scarfette by Amber O'Brien, Mara, Celia, Sophie Style Necktie. This one is made with Tunisian crochet, and we have For Granted, made with regular crochet, and I have a bunch more in a Ravelry bundle, and you can find the Ravelry bundle linked in the description box down below. Both knit and crochet patterns, both free and paid for, bigger and smaller creators, because I know there's a bunch of you who also don't knit at all or are more comfortable with crochet than knitting, so I wanted to include stuff for all of you guys. So yeah, both paid for and free patterns in that bundle, so yeah, feel free to check those out. So what's my opinion then? Is Sophie that great? I think it's a perfectly okay pattern. I have been knitting on my projects enthusiastically because they were very fun to make, but I don't know if I'll have use for the scarf. The shawl I will definitely have use for, as it is bigger and I'm just about halfway, so yeah, it's a lot bigger than the scarf. I will definitely have more use for this than the scarf. But yeah, I agree, it's maybe not the best pattern for a really new baby knitter, what with the row tracking and all of that. And like I said, the patterns are not the kind of newer style photos and descriptive language kind of patterns. It's totally fine, but I am aware that kind of pattern is not for everyone. But yeah, mixed feelings on this one, honestly, mixed feelings. Again though, very fun, very quick makes. The scarf only took me 4.5 hours to make, and I will definitely enjoy the shawl. I might repurpose the scarf yarn for something else, we shall see. But again, I want to say thanks everyone for leaving your thoughts and opinions in my Instagram story replies. If you aren't on Instagram but you also have stuff to say, if you have thoughts and opinions, feel free to put them in a comment down below the video, and we can continue talking about these patterns. Or tell me about your day today. If you don't feel like talking about the Sophie patterns, or tell me what you're working on currently. And if you don't feel like chatting, that is completely fine too. Go ahead and leave some emojis in your favorite color today. Mine is pink, but what is yours? Also, while you are down in the comments, please also take a tiny second to like the video if you liked it, as that helps me out a ton. Thank you. And also, if you are new here, hi, hello, and welcome. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end today. If you're new and you'd like to keep seeing what I get up to here on the channel in the future with my videos, please consider clicking the subscribe button down below and also ring the bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. I post all kinds of fun things on here, like knit and crochet challenges, project videos like this one, cozy live crafting hangouts, and more. So if any of this feels like something for you, please feel free to stick around and join the little cozy crafting club we got going here on the channel. We would love to have you. We also have a Discord open to subscribers to the channel, and also memberships are open if you want to leave some extra support for me and what I do on here. Don't forget to check out the Ravelry Bundle linked below if you feel like a scarf would be fun, but you're not necessarily wanting to make a petite knit pattern. Again, it is linked in the description down below. There you can also find links to my Ravelry and Ko-fi shops for patterns and other stuff, and links to my socials. But oh my goodness, this has been a lot of talking, so I'm gonna go ahead and let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all so very much for hanging out with me today and for listening to me yap about Sophie patterns. You guys take care now, and I will see you again very soon in my next video. Bye!
Thank you.